Sometimes the person who saves your life is the one who needed saving just as much. On a frozen Wyoming backroad at sundown, a woman pulled her truck alongside a lone mountain man and whispered words that changed everything. "I'm gonna die tonight." Jack Cordell had been alone in these mountains for 15 years, running from a past he couldn't forget. But when he saw the fear in her eyes and heard the tremble in her voice, he made a promise. "Not while I'm here to protect you." He didn't know that the men hunting her were tied to the very demons he'd been hiding from. And he didn't know why she chose to stop him on that empty road. What he would discover in the hours ahead would force them both to face the truth they'd been running from. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The wind carried the scent of coming snow across the high ridges of the Wind River Range. Jack Cordell moved through the timber with the quiet efficiency of a man who had walked these trails so many times they were etched into his bones. His boots crunched softly on frozen ground, his breath forming small clouds in the late afternoon air. He carried a string of rabbit snares over one shoulder and a worn canvas pack on his back. 53 years old, weathered by altitude and solitude, he looked like part of the landscape itself. 15 years he'd been up here. 15 years since he'd walked away from everything and everyone he'd ever known. The cabin he'd built sat in a hollow between two ridges, invisible from any road or trail unless you knew exactly where to look. That was the point. He'd chosen this place for its remoteness, for the certainty that the world would leave him alone if he left it alone first. His routine was simple, predictable, comforting in its monotony. Rise before dawn, check the trapline, hunt or fish depending on the season, chop wood, haul water from the spring, maintain the cabin against the elements. In winter, the work doubled. The cold demanded respect, demanded preparation, demanded constant vigilance. One mistake up here could be your last. He'd made his mistakes long ago. Down in the world of men and missions and choices that haunted you forever. Up here, the only choices were immediate and clear. Set the trap or go hungry. Split the wood or freeze. Simple mathematics of survival, with no room for the ghosts that had driven him into these mountains. Jack paused at the edge of a clearing, studying the sky. The light was fading fast, turning the snow-covered peaks to gold and then to shadow. Another hour and full dark would settle over the range. He needed to get back to the cabin, stoke the fire, prepare for what looked like a serious storm moving in from the west. The clouds had that heavy, laden look that promised a long night of snowfall. He was crossing the old logging road, the same one he walked twice a week on his way to and from the trapline, when he heard the vehicle. The sound carried strangely in the thin mountain air, echoing off rock faces, seeming to come from multiple directions at once. Jack stopped, every sense suddenly alert. Vehicles on this road were rare. The logging company had abandoned these operations years ago. Occasionally a lost hunter or a foolish tourist would wander up here, but not often. Not this late in the season, not with a storm coming. The truck appeared around the bend, moving slowly, hesitantly. It was a battered Chevy, maybe 20 years old, with a cracked windshield and a front bumper held on with baling wire. Not a tourist's vehicle, not a hunter's rig. It looked like something you'd see limping through a rural town, held together by necessity and prayer. The truck slowed as it approached him, then stopped. Jack's hand instinctively moved toward the hunting knife on his belt, not drawing it but ready. Old habits, old training, old instincts that never quite died no matter how long you hid from them. The driver's window rolled down with a mechanical grinding sound. The woman behind the wheel looked at him with eyes that held something Jack recognized immediately, because he'd seen it in his own mirror for years. Fear. Deep, bone-level fear mixed with exhaustion and something else. Desperation. She was younger than him, maybe late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had come half undone. Her face was pale, her lips slightly blue from cold. She wore a thin jacket, inadequate for these temperatures, and he could see her shivering even from where he stood. "Are you Jack Cordell?" Her voice was quiet, controlled, but he could hear the tremor underneath. Every alarm bell in his head started ringing at once. No one knew that name up here. He'd left Jack Cordell behind 15 years ago, along with everything else. He went by Jake Cooper on the rare occasions he had to deal with people in the valley towns, paid his property taxes through a post office box, bought supplies with cash, left no trail, no record, no reason for anyone to come looking. "Who's asking?" His voice came out rougher than he intended, rusty from disuse. He could go days up here without speaking a word aloud. "My name is Sarah Chen." She said it like he should recognize it, like it should mean something. It didn't. "I need your help. I need—" Her voice broke slightly. She took a breath, steadied herself. "I'm gonna die tonight." The words hung in the cold air between them. Jack saw her hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, saw the way her eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, checking the road behind her, saw the bruise forming along her jawline, the split lip, the way she held her left arm close to her ribs, like something hurt there. He should tell her he couldn't help, should tell her to drive down to Rock Springs, find the sheriff, get proper help from proper authorities. Should protect the isolation he'd built so carefully, the walls that kept the world and its complications away from him. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the fear in her eyes. Maybe it was the way she said his real name, the name he'd buried. Maybe it was just that he was tired of being alone, even if he'd never admitted it to himself. "Ma'am, I think you need to—" "They're coming." She cut him off, urgent now. "They're maybe an hour behind me, maybe less. I tried to lose them, but they're professional. They'll find me, and when they do—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "Please, I know who you are. I know who you were. James Corrigan, Ghost, Delta Force. I know everything." The name hit him like a physical blow. James Corrigan. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud in 15 years. Ghost. His call sign, earned through dozens of missions in a dozen countries. Operations that officially never happened, work that required a particular kind of man willing to do a particular kind of necessary evil. "I don't know what you're talking about." The denial was automatic, protective, worthless. "Yes, you do." Sarah's eyes locked on his, and he saw something there beyond fear. Recognition, understanding, shared knowledge of what it meant to run from something you couldn't escape. "And right now, you're the only person in the world who can help me. The only person they won't expect. The only person who might be able to—" She stopped again, and this time when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Not while I'm here to protect you." She'd thrown his own words back at him, words he must have said at some point in some other life. Or maybe they were just the right words, the only words that could breach the walls he'd built. Jack looked at the darkening sky, then back at the woman. Calculated distances, times, options. An hour head start, maybe less. Professional pursuers. That meant training, resources, determination. That meant they'd keep coming no matter what. And if they knew to look for Jack Cordell in these mountains, they knew more than they should. Which meant someone had talked, someone had broken security, someone had violated protocols that should have kept his location buried forever. "Drive up the road another quarter-mile," he said finally. "You'll see a boulder shaped like a bear's head on the right side. Turn onto the track just past it. It's rough, but your truck will make it. Follow it for half a mile until you see a lightning-struck pine. Park there and wait. I'll be 5 minutes behind you." Sarah nodded, relief flooding her face for just a moment before the fear reasserted itself. She rolled up the window and the truck pulled away, grinding through the gears, leaving him standing alone on the empty road as the first snowflakes began to fall. Jack stood there for a long moment, watching the truck disappear around the next bend. He was thinking about the life he'd built in these mountains, the peace he'd found, or at least the absence of war. The quiet that had slowly, gradually begun to feel less like punishment and more like sanctuary. And he was thinking about the woman's eyes, and the way she'd known his real name, and the fear that reminded him of another time, another life, when fear was a tool you used, and a burden you carried, and a price you paid for the things you had to do. He started walking toward the boulder shaped like a bear's head, moving faster now, his mind already working through what he'd need from the cabin: weapons, medical supplies, food, and water, defensive positions, sight lines, fallback routes. The tactical part of his brain, dormant for so long, flickering back to life like a muscle remembering motion. Ghost Corrigan might have been buried for 15 years, but apparently the grave wasn't deep enough. The cabin was exactly as he'd left it that morning, small, solid, built to withstand the worst the mountains could throw at it. One room with a sleeping loft, a stone fireplace that could heat the whole space, shelves lined with supplies and equipment. No electricity, no running water, no connection to the world below. Perfect isolation. Sarah's truck sat next to the lightning-struck pine, engine ticking as it cooled. She'd followed his directions exactly. When Jack arrived, she was standing beside the vehicle, arms wrapped around herself against the cold, watching the tree line with the alertness of someone who expected trouble from any direction. "Inside," Jack said, moving past her to unlock the cabin door. "We don't have much time." She followed him in, and he saw her take in the space with a practiced eye. Not the curiosity of a tourist, but the assessment of someone with training. She noted the windows, the door, the sight lines, the defensibility. Military spouse, he thought. Or something more. Jack stirred the coals in the fireplace, added kindling, got a flame going. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair nearest the growing fire. "You're hypothermic." Sarah sank into the chair, and now that she was inside, in relative safety, he could see the full extent of her condition. She wasn't just cold, she was injured, exhausted, running on nothing but fear and determination. Her left hand shook as she held it toward the fire. He brought her a wool blanket, draped it over her shoulders, filled a kettle with water from the barrel by the door, hung it over the fire. "Hot water first, then we talk," he said. "We don't have time." "We make time." His voice was firm, the command tone he'd used with younger operators who didn't know when to slow down and think. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse. 5 minutes won't make a difference." She nodded, pulling the blanket tighter. Jack used those 5 minutes to gather what he'd need. From a false panel in the floorboards, he pulled a pistol, a knife, ammunition. From the loft, a medical kit. From the shelf, dried food, water bottles. His mind was cataloguing, prioritizing, preparing. When the water was hot, he made her tea, real tea, not the pine needle substitute he usually drank. She wrapped her hands around the cup, drinking slowly, and he could see some color returning to her face. "Tell me," he said, sitting across from her. "Start from the beginning." Sarah set the cup down, met his eyes. "My husband was Marcus Chen. He served with you. Delta Force, same unit. He died 11 years ago on a mission in Syria." The name hit him like a second punch. Marcus Chen. Young, brilliant, deadly competent, one of the best operators Jack had ever worked with. And yes, he died in Syria. He died because of a call Jack had made. A decision that saved most of the team but cost Marcus his life. "I remember him," Jack said quietly. "I know you do." Sarah's voice was steady now, warming from the inside out. "He talked about you. A lot. Said you were the best commander he'd ever served under. Said you made the hard calls that no one else would make. Said you saved his life more times than he could count. But not the last time. No, not the last time." Sarah looked down at her hands. "The official story was that your team walked into an ambush. Bad intelligence, wrong place, wrong time. Marcus and 2 others died. You and the rest made it out." That's what happened. The words felt hollow, even as he said them. No. Sarah looked up, and her eyes were hard now. That's what someone wanted everyone to believe. But Marcus knew different. In the weeks before that mission, he'd started noticing things, inconsistencies in the intelligence, communications that didn't quite add up. He thought someone on the inside was compromised. Jack felt something cold settle in his gut. He never said anything to me. He didn't have proof, just suspicions, but he was keeping records, taking notes. Sarah reached into her jacket, pulled out a cell phone. Not a smartphone, one of the old flip phones. A burner. He left this for me. Told me if anything happened to him, I should keep it safe. Keep it hidden. He said if he was right, people would come looking for it eventually. She opened the phone, navigated to the messages. One message, sent 3 hours before Marcus died. Jack read it, felt the bottom drop out of his world. They know. Coming tonight. If I don't make it, find Ghost. He'll understand. He'll know what to do. The evidence is everything. Don't trust the chain, M. He sent that from Syria? Jack's voice was rough. Yes, it was the last thing he ever sent me. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she closed the phone. I didn't understand it then. I was pregnant, grieving, falling apart. I put the phone away and tried to forget, but I couldn't. It haunted me. What did he mean? What evidence? Why you? And you figured it out. It wasn't a question. It took years. I left the service. I was an intelligence analyst, met Marcus through work, started digging on my own time, following threads. Marcus had been investigating someone, another operator, someone he trusted, someone who, she stopped, took a breath, someone who was selling intelligence to the enemy, who set up that ambush, who got Marcus and the others killed. Jack stood, moved to the window, looked out at the gathering darkness. Snow was falling steadily now, heavy flakes that would cover tracks, reduce visibility, make pursuit more difficult. But professional hunters wouldn't stop for weather. They'd adapt, adjust, keep coming. Who? He asked. Vincent Cade. The name was another blow, maybe the worst one yet. Vincent Cade, his second in command. The man who'd been by his side on 100 missions. The man he'd trusted with his life, with his team's lives. The man who, after Syria, had looked him in the eye and said, "You made the right call, Ghost. Marcus's death isn't on you." Except it was. Just not the way Jack had thought. Cade's been running an arms trafficking operation for years, Sarah continued. Using his military contacts, his knowledge of supply chains, his understanding of how the system works. He's moved weapons to insurgents, cartels, anyone with money. Marcus found proof, records, communications, financial transactions. He was going to turn Cade in. So Cade set up the ambush, killed Marcus before he could talk. Yes, and after the mission, when you disappeared, Cade took that as confirmation that you knew, that you were complicit or at least suspicious. He's been watching for any sign of you surfacing, any indication that you might have evidence. Jack turned back to face her. But I didn't. I left because I couldn't live with the guilt. I thought Marcus died because I made a bad call. That's what Cade wanted you to think. That's what he wanted everyone to think. Sarah stood, sans-gourde, still, wrapped in the blanket. Marcus left evidence with me, encrypted files on a drive. I've had it for 11 years, hidden, waiting to understand what it meant. 2 weeks ago, I figured it out, broke the encryption, saw everything, and Cade found out. Someone must have been monitoring me. Maybe they always were, waiting to see if I'd ever access the files. The moment I did, they came. She touched her bruised jaw. I barely got away. They killed my neighbor, thinking it was me. I grabbed what I could and ran. I've been running for 2 weeks, staying ahead of them by hours, sometimes minutes. Why didn't you go to the authorities? Because Cade has contacts everywhere. Military, law enforcement, intelligence agencies. I don't know who's compromised and who isn't. The only person Marcus told me to trust was you. So I found you. Took me months of searching, cross-referencing property records, utility accounts, tracking patterns. But I found you. Jack moved to the door, peered out through a gap in the shutters. Nothing yet, but they'd come. Cade would come. The man he'd once called brother. The man who'd betrayed everything they stood for. The man who'd let him live with false guilt for 15 years. How many? I've counted at least 6 different men over the past 2 weeks. Could be more. They're professionals, former military, probably contractors Cade hired. And Cade himself, I don't know if he's with them, but he'll be directing them. He knows how you think, Jack. He trained with you, fought beside you. He knows your patterns, your tactics. Jack turned back to her. Where's the evidence now? Sarah pulled a small USB drive from a pocket inside her jacket. Everything's on here. Marcus's original files, my decryption keys, additional investigation I've done over the years. Enough to bring Cade down and expose everyone working with him. Then we need to get it somewhere safe. Somewhere that if we don't make it... I've set up a dead man switch, Sarah interrupted. If I don't check in every 12 hours, the files automatically upload to multiple news organizations and law enforcement agencies. I last checked in 3 hours ago. Which means 110 C. 9 hours until the world knows. Jack nodded slowly. So Cade has a deadline. He needs to get to you, get that drive, before morning. Yes, and he needs to eliminate me, because I'm a witness now. I know the truth. Yes. Jack looked at this woman, this stranger who wasn't really a stranger, who carried the weight of his past and her own grief, and a piece of evidence that would topple an empire built on betrayal and blood. She'd come to him because a dead man had trusted him. Because Marcus Chen, in his final message, had believed that Ghost Corrigan would do the right thing. From outside, faint but clear, came the sound of engines, multiple vehicles moving slowly up the mountain road. Cade's men, arriving exactly when expected. Jack met Sarah's eyes. "Not while I'm here to protect you," he said again, and this time he meant it with everything he had. He moved to the weapons cache, started pulling out what they'd need. Sarah stood, dropped the blanket, and he saw her transform from exhausted fugitive to something harder, more focused. She'd been running for 2 weeks, but she wasn't helpless. She knew what was coming. "Tell me the defensive plan," she said. Jack smiled grimly. It was a small smile, but the first real one he'd made in years. "Welcome to the worst night of your life," he said. "And maybe the last one, but if we're going out, we're taking some of them with us." The engines grew louder, echoing through the valley. The storm intensified, wind howling through the trees. And inside the small cabin, 2 people who'd been running from their pasts, prepared to make a stand that would define their futures. If they had futures at all. The first shots were probing fire, testing their response. Rounds punched through the cabin walls, thudding into the log walls with the heavy impact of high-powered rifles. Not trying to hit them yet, just establishing that they could. Psychological warfare. Let the targets know they're boxed in, vulnerable, outgunned. Jack didn't return fire. No point revealing positions yet. Beside him, Sarah stayed low, professional, breathing controlled. She'd been under fire before, he realized. Maybe not like this, but enough to know how to handle it. 8 shooters confirmed, she said quietly, tracking muzzle flashes through her scope. 4 east, 2 south, 2 west. North is clear. North is sheer cliff. They know we can't run that way. Jack counted seconds in his head. The assault pattern was textbook. Suppress, advance, breach. They'd move soon. 30 seconds. Get ready. The gunfire intensified. Concentrated bursts now, aimed at the windows, the door, any point of egress. Glass shattered, wood splintered, the cabin filled with the smell of gunpowder and pine dust. Through the chaos, Jack heard Cade's voice on the radio, coordinating the assault with the precision of long practice. Bravo team advance to secondary line. Alpha, maintain suppression. Charlie, prepare for breach. Standard special operations tactics. The kind Jack had used 100 times. The kind Cade had learned from him. Now, Jack said. He fired 3 controlled bursts through the east window, aiming high, not trying to hit anyone but forcing them to take cover. Beside him, Sarah did the same through the south window. The incoming fire paused, just for a moment, as the assault teams reacted to resistance. That moment was all they needed. Jack grabbed the emergency pack, Sarah grabbed hers, and they moved. Not out the door, that's what Cade would expect, but through a trapdoor hidden under a rug near the fireplace. Down into darkness, into the root cellar that Jack had spent months digging and reinforcing. The trapdoor closed above them with a soft thump, invisible from above, covered by the fallen rug. Underground, the sounds of battle muffled to distant thunder. Jack led the way by touch, no light, navigating by memory through the narrow tunnel. Behind him, Sarah moved with the silence of training, keeping pace, trusting him. The tunnel ran 50 feet, angling up toward the tree line. Jack had built it during the first winter, knowing that someday he might need an escape route. Paranoia, maybe, or the survival instinct of a man who'd made too many enemies. They emerged behind a deadfall, natural cover that concealed the tunnel's exit. Snow immediately soaked through their clothing, the storm still raging. Jack paused, listening. Above them, at the cabin, the assault had intensified. Flashbangs, the distinctive thump of breaching charges, the organized chaos of a dynamic entry. "They're in," Sarah whispered. "Good. Let them think we're dead or captured." Jack oriented himself, then pointed, "This way, 50 meters to the overwatch position." They moved through the storm, using the weather as cover. Jack's knowledge of the terrain paid off. Even in darkness, even in driving snow, he knew where to step, where the ground was solid, where the footing was treacherous. Sarah followed close, learning the path as they went. The overwatch position was a natural rock formation, 3 large boulders that formed a shelter from wind and provided a commanding view of the cabin below. Jack had prepared it years ago, stashed supplies, cleared sightlines. Now it would serve as their fortress. They settled in, breathing hard from the sprint through snow. Below, lights moved through the cabin. Tactical lights, methodical search patterns. Cadet's men were good. They wouldn't assume anything, would clear every corner, every possible hiding spot. "How long until they realize we're gone?" Sarah asked. "Minutes. Then they'll search the perimeter, find the tunnel eventually. But by then," Jack checked his watch, "by then, we'll have cut their numbers down." Sarah set up her rifle, finding a stable rest between rocks. From this angle, she had a clear view of the cabin's surroundings, the approaches, the rally points where Cade's men would regroup. "What's the plan?" "They think they've won, think they've got us trapped or dead. That makes them relaxed, careless. When they come out of that cabin, they'll be congratulating themselves. That's when we hit them. And Cade? Cade's smart. He'll stay back, let his men take the risk. We won't get him in the first pass." Jack settled in beside her, weapon ready. "But we'll get some of them. Thin the herd. Make him worry." They waited. Below, the search continued. Jack could imagine the confusion when they found the trapdoor, the tunnel, the empty exit. Cade would understand immediately what had happened. Would know that Ghost Corrigan was still playing the game, still using terrain and tactics to level an uneven field. "Movement," Sarah said. 3 men, coming out, southeast corner." Jack saw them. Relaxed postures, weapons lowered. One was talking into a radio, probably reporting the cabin clear. They moved toward the vehicles, probably planning to set up a command post, coordinate the expanded search. "Wait for my shot," Jack said. "Then take the one on the right." Sarah's breathing slowed, steadied. Sniper's breath, the calm before action. Ready. Jack aimed, not at the men but at the radio antenna on the nearest vehicle. The shot was calculated, precise, the kind of marksmanship that came from endless practice and natural talent. He squeezed the trigger. The antenna exploded. The three men dove for cover, professional reactions to unexpected fire. But they were looking the wrong direction, thinking the shot came from the cabin. Sarah fired, her round taking the rightmost man in the leg. Not lethal, Jack had been clear about that, but incapacitating. The man went down hard. The other two returned fire, but they were shooting at shadows, at the wrong target. Jack fired again, another non-lethal hit, and the second man fell. The third made it to cover behind the vehicle, shouting into his radio, calling for backup. Below, chaos erupted. Men poured out of the cabin, taking up defensive positions, scanning for threats. But they were looking down the mountain, expecting an external attack, not thinking about the high ground behind them. "Reposition," Jack said. 50 meters east. Move slow. Stay quiet." They displaced, moving before return fire could find them. Another tactical principle: shoot and move, never stay in one place. Cade would know to check the high ground eventually, but by then they'd be somewhere else. At the new position, Jack looked at Sarah. Her face was set, determined, but he could see the toll this was taking, not physical fear, but the weight of it. The understanding that this was kill or be killed, that mercy might be their downfall. "You okay?" he asked. "I have to be." Sarah checked her ammunition, reloaded. "How many more before Cade comes personally?" "As many as it takes. He's patient. He'll sacrifice pawns to protect his king." "Then we keep taking pawns." Sarah's voice was hard now, resolved. "Until he has no choice." Below, Cade's voice crackled over the scanner. "Ghost, I'm impressed. You haven't lost your touch, but you're just delaying the inevitable. We have time. You don't. That deadline is still ticking." Jack picked up his radio. "Then you better move faster, Vincent. Clock's running for both of us." He turned off the radio, met Sarah's eyes. 3 hours until dawn. 3 hours until your dead man's switch activates. Can you fight that long?" Sarah's answer was to chamber another round. "Watch me." The storm was both blessing and curse. It covered their movements, masked their sounds, made tracking nearly impossible. But it also sapped strength, chilled to the bone, turned every action into a battle against elements as well as enemies. Jack felt it in his joints, the deep ache of age and cold. 15 years of mountain living had hardened him, but 53 was 53. The body remembered even when the mind pretended otherwise. Beside him, Sarah shivered despite her layers. Jack pulled an emergency blanket from his pack, the thin, reflective kind that looked useless but trapped heat. He draped it over her shoulders. "I'm fine," she protested. "You're hypothermic again." "We both are. 5 minutes of warmth won't hurt." Jack huddled close, sharing body heat, the practical intimacy of survival. "Tell me about Marcus." "Not the operator. The man." Sarah was quiet for a moment, hands wrapped around the blanket. Below, Cade's men were reorganizing, setting up a perimeter, preparing for a methodical sweep. They had time. Not much, but some. "He loved breakfast," Sarah said finally. "Sounds silly, but it's what I remember most. He'd wake up early, even on leave, and make these elaborate breakfasts. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit. Said if you started the day right, everything else would follow." Jack smiled, despite everything. He did that in the field too, always had the best MREs somehow. Traded for them, saved them. We'd be in some godforsaken desert eating cardboard, and Marcus would pull out a halfway decent meal. He said food was civilization. No matter how bad things got, if you could sit down and eat something good, you were still human. Sarah touched the dog tags at her throat. After he died, I couldn't eat breakfast for a year. Every morning felt like... She stopped, collected herself, like I was betraying his memory by being alive to eat it. That's not what he would have wanted. No. But grief doesn't care what the dead would want. It just takes and takes until you learn to live around it. Sarah looked at him. Is that what you did up here? Learn to live around it? Jack considered. I tried to. Thought if I was alone, if I punished myself enough, eventually the guilt would fade. But it doesn't work that way. You can't run from what you carry inside. Then why did you stay? Because I didn't know what else to do. Didn't know how to face the people I'd let down. My team, my family, myself. He paused, remembering. I have a daughter, Emily. She was 16 when I left. Told her I had one more mission, would be back in a few weeks. That was 15 years ago. Sarah's expression softened. You never contacted her? How could I? What would I say? Sorry I disappeared. Sorry I chose guilt over being your father. Jack shook his head. She's better off without me. Is she? Or is that just what you tell yourself to justify staying hidden? The question cut deeper than Jack expected. He'd told himself for years that Emily was better off, that his presence would only bring danger or disappointment. But hearing it from Sarah, hearing the echo of something Marcus might have said, made him question the narrative he'd built. Marcus talked about you, Sarah said. The last time he was home, before Syria, he said you were the best commander but also the most haunted. Said you carried every decision like a stone, never put them down. He worried about you. He should have worried about himself. He did. That's why he left me the evidence, the message. He knew something was wrong, knew there was a chance he wouldn't come home. Because that's what soldiers do. Below, a flare shot up, chemical green against the white snow. Signal for regroup, probably. Cade's men were tightening their formation, preparing for the next phase. Jack counted 8, still moving, 2 wounded, 1 seriously. That left 6 operational plus Cade himself. Better odds than before, but still not good. Sarah, Jack said, if this goes wrong, if we don't make it, I need you to know that Marcus, he struggled for words, he was the best of us. And you coming here, trusting me with this, that means something. That means his faith wasn't misplaced. We're going to make it, Sarah said firmly. Both of us. Because Marcus's evidence needs to reach the right people, and because she met his eyes. Because you have a daughter who deserves to know her father didn't abandon her, who deserves to know that you were a good man who made hard choices. I don't know if she'd forgive me. Then you give her the chance to try. That's all any of us can ask for. Movement below interrupted them. 4 men moving out in a standard search pattern, sweeping toward their previous position. Professional, careful, but predictable. Jack recognized the pattern one he'd taught to young operators years ago. Cade was using the same playbook, the same tactics, which meant Jack could anticipate, could stay 1 move ahead. They're coming for us, Sarah observed. Let them come. We'll be gone before they arrive. Jack folded up the emergency blanket, stuffed it in his pack. The brief warmth had helped, but the cold was already seeping back. Next position is west, higher elevation, harder climb but better sight lines. How many more positions did you prepare? 6 total, we've used 3. Jack checked his ammunition, running low, but enough for what they needed. Question is whether Cade figures out the pattern before we run out of ground. And if he does, then we improvise, make it up as we go, hope we're smarter and luckier than he is. Jack started moving, staying low, using the terrain. Story of my life, really. Sarah followed, and as they climbed through snow and darkness toward the next defensive position, Jack found himself thinking about Emily, wondering what she looked like now. Whether she was married, had children of her own, whether she thought about him or had long since written him off as dead or worse. If they survived this night, he promised himself, he'd find out. He'd stop running, stop hiding, stop letting guilt make his decisions. If they survived, the fourth position gave them a commanding view of the entire valley. From here, Jack could see the cabin, the vehicles, the searching teams, all laid out like pieces on a chessboard. The storm had eased slightly, visibility improving, which cut both ways. They could see better, but so could the enemy. Sarah was setting up her rifle when she suddenly froze. "Jack!" Something in her voice made him turn immediately. She was staring at her pack, at something that had fallen out when she'd pulled out ammunition. A letter, old, the paper yellowed with age. "What is it?" Sarah picked up the letter with shaking hands. "I'd forgotten. Marcus left this with the evidence drive. I found it when I broke the encryption. But everything happened so fast. Jack, you need to read this." He took the letter, unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was Marcus's. He recognized it from operation reports and orders. But this was personal, intimate, written in the hours before that final mission. "Sarah, my love," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. Sorry for leaving you alone. But there are things you need to know, things I couldn't tell you while I was alive, because knowing them would put you in danger." Jack's hands tightened on the paper as he read. "The mission Ghost and I are about to run is compromised. I'm certain of it now. Vincent Cade has been feeding intelligence to the enemy for months, maybe longer. I've documented everything, encrypted it, left it where you'll find it. But that's not the whole truth. The reason I know about Cade is because I was recruited to help expose him, not by our command, not by official channels, by Ghost himself. 3 months ago, Ghost came to me privately, told me he'd started noticing inconsistencies in our intelligence, operations that went wrong in ways that shouldn't have. He suspected a mole but couldn't prove it, couldn't trust the chain of command because he didn't know how high the corruption went. He asked me to help him investigate. I said yes. We worked in secret, gathering evidence, building a case. We tracked the leaks to Cade, confirmed he was selling information and weapons to enemies. We planned to turn everything over to the Inspector General after this next mission. But I think Cade found out. I think tonight's operation is his way of silencing us both. Ghost doesn't know I'm writing this, doesn't know I'm leaving you evidence that could expose him to danger. But if something happens to me, I need you to understand, Ghost isn't responsible for my death. He's trying to stop it. He's trying to do the right thing, even though it could destroy his career, his life. If I die tonight, it's because Cade betrayed us, not because Ghost made a bad call. Ghost is a good man, the best commander I've ever served under. If you ever need help, if the people I've exposed come after you, find him, trust him. He'll protect you, because that's who he is. I love you, Sarah. I'm sorry for all of this, but some fights are worth fighting, even if you don't survive them. Always, Marcus. Jack's vision blurred. He read the letter again, then a third time, each word hitting him like a physical blow. All these years, all the guilt, the self-recrimination, the certainty that his failure had killed Marcus. And Marcus had known, had been working with him, had walked into that ambush understanding the risks because they'd been trying to do the right thing together. He knew, Jack said, his voice hoarse, he knew the mission was compromised. He went anyway because you were both trying to stop Cade, Sarah finished, because Marcus believed in what you were doing. But I didn't know he was helping me. Cade must have. Jack's mind raced, pieces falling into place. The ambush. Cade fed us bad intelligence, but he didn't know Marcus and I were working together. He thought if he eliminated Marcus, he'd eliminate the threat. When I survived and disappeared, he assumed I'd run because I was complicit or because I knew I'd failed. But you disappeared because you thought it was your fault. Yes, and Cade let me think that, let me carry the guilt, because as long as I was broken hiding, I wasn't a threat. Jack looked at the letter again. But Marcus left you the evidence, because he knew someday the truth would come out. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the letter back. All these years, I thought you'd gotten him killed through bad judgment. That's why I was so angry when I started researching you, why finding you was so hard. I wanted to blame someone, and you were the easiest target. When did you realize the truth? When I broke Marcus's encryption and saw the files, saw the evidence he and you had gathered together, saw the notes about your investigation. Sarah wiped at her eyes. I realized I'd been wrong about you, that Marcus's trust was earned, not misplaced. That's when I knew I had to find you, not just for protection, but to give you this letter, to let you know that Marcus never blamed you. Jack felt something inside him crack open, 15 years of guilt draining away like poison from a wound. He hadn't failed Marcus, hadn't gotten him killed through incompetence or cowardice. They'd been partners, trying to stop corruption, and Marcus had died as a result of that choice. It was tragic, it was painful, but it wasn't Jack's fault. Cade doesn't know, he said slowly. He doesn't know that Marcus and I were working together. Doesn't know. The evidence implicates both of us in the investigation. What does that mean? It means his whole strategy is based on a false assumption. He thinks I'm a broken recluse who'll crack under pressure. He doesn't know I'm... Jack stopped, understanding flooding through him. He doesn't know that I've known the truth all along, that I've been building a case for 15 years. That wasn't true, but Cade didn't know that. Cade thought Jack was Ghost Corrigan, master tactician, patient operative. If Cade believed Jack had been working this whole time, hiding and gathering evidence, he'd have to reassess everything. Jack grabbed his radio, keyed it. "Vincent, we need to talk." A pause. Then, "I'm listening, Ghost. I know what you think happened. You think Marcus found out about your operation and you eliminated him before he could talk. You think I ran because I couldn't handle the guilt. That's exactly what happened. No, Marcus and I were working together. We knew about your trafficking months before Syria. We had evidence, witness statements, financial records. We were building a case." Another pause. Longer. Jack could imagine Cade processing this, running scenarios. If that were true, you would have come forward years ago. I needed to find all of it. Your buyers, your suppliers, everyone in your network. Marcus died before we could complete the investigation. I've spent 15 years finishing it. Every transaction, every deal, every person you've corrupted. Jack let that sink in. He checked his watch. 2 hours and 40 minutes. All of it goes public. Sarah's dead man switch isn't just her evidence. It's mine too. It was a bluff, but a good one. Cade couldn't know for certain what evidence Jack had or didn't have, and the threat of exposure from multiple sources would force him to recalculate. The radio stayed silent for a long moment. Then, "Am I? You trained with me, Vincent. You know how I think. You know I don't give up, don't forget, don't forgive. You really think I spent 15 years hiding in these mountains doing nothing?" Jack's voice was cold now, certain. "I let you think you'd won, let you think I was broken. But I was watching, waiting, building the case that will destroy everything you've built." More silence. Jack could almost hear the gears turning in Cade's mind. Doubt was a powerful weapon. Once planted, it grew. Finally, "Even if that's true, you both die tonight. The evidence dies with you. That's what you think. But dead man switches are dead man switches for a reason, Vincent. Kill us, and you guarantee your exposure. Let us live, and maybe we can make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "The kind where you walk away right now, disappear like I did, take what you can carry and run. Because come dawn, there's nowhere safe for you. Not here, Not anywhere. Cade laughed, but there was less confidence in it now. You expect me to believe you'd just let me go. I expect you to believe that I'm tired, that 15 years of hunting you was enough, that I want this over more than I want revenge. Jack paused. But if you force my hand, I'll end this the hard way. Your choice. The radio clicked off. Sarah looked at Jack with wide eyes. Was any of that true? The part about Marcus and me working together, the rest, he smiled grimly. Sometimes the best weapon is the enemy's imagination. Let Cade wonder what's real and what's not. Will he run? No. He's too far in, too invested, but he'll be cautious now, uncertain. And that gives us an advantage. Jack checked his weapon. He'll come personally now. Won't trust his men to handle this. And when he does, we end it. Sarah finished. Jack nodded. We end it. The change in Cade's approach was immediate and obvious. The searching teams pulled back, consolidated. No more scattered patrols or predictable patterns. They formed a tight defensive perimeter around the vehicles, weapons outward, watching the darkness with the wariness of men who suddenly realized they might be the ones being hunted. Jack watched through borrowed binoculars, reading the body language, the tactical adjustments. He bought it, at least partially. He's not sure what we have, so he's going defensive. How long will that last? Not long. He's on a deadline same as us. Eventually he'll have to make a move. Jack lowered the binoculars. But it gives us time to prepare. From his pack, Jack pulled items he hadn't touched in 15 years. His old tactical vest, the one with the Delta Force patch still sewn to the chest. The patch was faded, the edges frayed, but the distinctive arrowhead design was clear. He looked at it for a long moment, remembering the man who'd worn it, the operator called Ghost, who'd led men into impossible situations and brought most of them home. You kept it, Sarah said softly. Couldn't throw it away. Couldn't wear it either. So it sat in my pack, reminder of who I used to be. Jack ran his finger over the patch. Marcus gave this to me, after my first mission as commander. Said a good leader needed symbols, something men could rally around. He was right. Are you going to wear it? Jack held the vest, feeling the weight of it, the history. Then he slipped it on, fastened the straps, settled it into place. It fit differently than it had 15 years ago. His body had changed, hardened by mountain living, but it still fit. The patch sat over his heart, exactly where it belonged. I'm done hiding from who I was, he said. Cade wants Ghost Corrigan? He can have him. Sarah smiled, and there was something fierce in it. Marcus would be proud. Marcus would tell me I'm an idiot for waiting this long. Jack checked his weapon, his ammunition, his gear. Everything was ready. Everything except him, and now finally he was ready too. Tell me about the evidence. Everything on that drive. Sarah pulled out the USB drive, held it like the precious thing it was. Financial records going back 8 years, transactions, account numbers, shell companies. Marcus tracked every dollar Cade made, selling weapons and intelligence. Who are the buyers? Terrorists, cartels, insurgents, anyone with money. Cade didn't discriminate. He sold TOW missiles to Iraqi insurgents, AT-4 seconds to Mexican cartels, classified intelligence to Russian agents. He facilitated deals worth tens of millions of dollars. Jack felt cold rage settle in his gut. How many people died because of those weapons? Hundreds, maybe thousands, including Americans, including soldiers we served with. Sarah's voice was hard. That's why this matters. It's not just about revenge for Marcus. It's about justice for everyone Cade betrayed. Who else is implicated? 3 other former operators, 2 current Pentagon officials, 1 senator. Cade built a network, people who looked the other way or actively helped in exchange for money. Sarah looked at the drive. This will blow up careers, maybe trigger congressional investigations. It's bigger than just one bad operator, which is why Cade will do anything to stop it. Yes. Jack was quiet for a moment, thinking. The dead man's switch. How does it work? I have to check in every 12 hours using a specific code. If I don't, or if I enter the wrong code, the files automatically upload to pre-selected recipients, news organizations, congressional oversight committees, the Inspector General. I set it up through an encrypted service that's completely automated. No one can stop it except me. When's your next check-in? Sarah checked her watch. 2 hours and 15 minutes. And if Cade captures you, forces you to enter the code. There are 2 codes, one that resets the timer, one that triggers immediate upload. I enter the wrong one, everything goes public instantly. She met his eyes. He can't win, Jack. Even if he kills us both, the evidence survives. Unless he gets the drive and you before you can trigger the upload. That's why I'm not getting captured. Sarah's voice was absolutely certain. I'll die first. It won't come to that. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise to do everything possible to make sure it doesn't. Jack scanned the valley below. Cade's men were still in defensive formation, but he could see movement, preparation. They were getting ready for something. He's going to come for us. One final push before your deadline. Everything he has, all at once. Can we stop that? Maybe. If we choose the ground, control the approach, use every advantage. Jack pointed to the terrain between their position and the valley floor. Narrow ridge, steep approaches on both sides. They can only come at us a few at a time. That negates their numbers. But we're trapped up here. No retreat. Sometimes the best defense is having nowhere to run. Makes you fight harder. Jack smiled without humor. Besides, we don't need to win. We just need to survive for 2 more hours. Sarah nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Cover the approach from here. Anyone who tries to climb, you make them regret it. I'll move to a forward position, slow them down, make them pay for every foot of ground. Jack pulled out Marcus's combat knife, the one Sarah had given him. If they get past me, if it comes down to it, you trigger the upload and run. Don't wait. Don't try to save me. Jack, promise me, Sarah, this is bigger than either of us. That evidence has to survive. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, only if you promise the same. If they get to me, if I can't trigger the upload, you run. You get word out about what Cade did. You tell people about Marcus, about what we tried to do. Jack didn't want to make that promise. Didn't want to imagine leaving her behind. But she was right. Someone had to survive to tell the story. I promise, he said. They shook hands on it, a formal agreement between warriors. If you need me to fall back, pop red smoke. If you're in immediate danger, flare. I'll come running. And if you need me, I'll use hand signals if I can see you. If not, Jack tapped his radio. Keep channel 3 open. Quick bursts only. Cade's probably monitoring, but in an emergency, communication is worth the risk. Sarah checked her watch again. 2 hours and 10 minutes. Then let's make them count. Jack moved down from their position, navigating the slope with the confidence of long practice. He could hear Sarah settling in above him, finding stable firing positions, preparing her sight picture. Good, she knew what she was doing. The forward position was a cluster of rocks, about halfway between the high ground and the valley floor. Defensible, with good cover, but exposed enough that Cade's men would think it was a mistake. They'd commit to the assault, thinking they could overrun a lone defender, and maybe they could. But they'd pay for it. Jack set up his rifle, arranged his ammunition and grenades within easy reach. From here, he could see the entire approach. Anyone climbing would be exposed, vulnerable, easy targets. The trick was making them commit before they realized it was a kill zone. Below, something changed. Cade's men started moving, loading into vehicles, engines starting. Jack grabbed his binoculars, watched as 3 trucks began moving up the mountain road. Not subtle, not tactical. A direct assault, overwhelming force, exactly what he'd have done in Cade's position when time was running out. He keyed his radio, brief burst. Sarah, 3 vehicles inbound, estimate 15 men. They're coming hard. Her voice crackled back. I see them. Stay safe. Jack smiled at that. Stay safe. As if that were possible now. As if they weren't about to face the worst odds either of them had ever encountered. But the sentiment was nice. He settled into his position, feeling the weight of Marcus's compass over his heart, the patch on his chest. Ghost Corrigan was back. Not the young operator who'd made his reputation in a dozen countries. Not the broken man who'd hidden in these mountains for 15 years. Something else. Something that combined both, the skills and the wisdom, the training and the hard-won understanding that came from loss. The trucks stopped at the base of the ridge. Men deployed, professional and coordinated. Jack counted 12 visible, probably more in reserve. They formed up, checked weapons, prepared for the climb. And then, through the binoculars, he saw Cade. Vincent Cade stepped out of the lead vehicle, tall and confident, wearing tactical gear that had seen use. He looked up the mountain, and even at this distance, Jack could see the determination in his posture. Cade had come personally. This was it. The final confrontation, 15 years in the making. Cadet raised a radio to his lips, and Jack's scanner picked up the transmission. Ghost. I'm coming up. You and me, face to face. The way it should have been 15 years ago. Your call. We do this clean, one-on-one, or I send everyone, and we do it ugly. Jack picked up his own radio. You think I'm fool enough to believe you'll honor that? I think you're desperate enough to try anything. And I think you know that if we go the ugly route, Sarah dies along with you. But if it's just us, maybe she walks away. A pause. I'm not asking for your surrender, Ghost. I'm asking for a fair fight. The warrior's way. What do you say? Jack looked up the slope, toward where Sarah was hidden. Looked at the men forming up for assault, looked at his watch. 2 hours and 5 minutes until the deadline. Cade was gambling that Jack's sense of honor would override his tactical judgment. That Ghost Corrigan would choose a fair fight over a smart one, and the hell of it was. Cade was right. Come ahead, Vincent, Jack said into the radio. Just you. We'll settle this like we should have long ago. Alone? Unarmed? Armed. I'm not that stupid. But one-on-one. No backup, no interference. Jack paused. Unless you're afraid you can't take an old man. Cade laughed. See you in 5 minutes, Ghost. Try not to die before I get there. The radio went dead. Jack watched as Cade said something to his men, then started climbing alone, true to his word. Or so it appeared. Sarah's voice crackled on the radio. Jack, this is a trap. I know. Then why? Because it's also an opportunity. Trust me. He hoped he wasn't wrong. The fight turned brutal, desperate. Jack felt his body screaming, every old injury flaring, every year of age, a weight dragging at him. But he pushed through it, channeling decades of training, of muscle memory, of sheer, stubborn refusal to quit. Cade was better, younger, stronger, faster. But Jack was meaner. He fought dirty, used every trick learned in a lifetime of combat. Threw snow in Cade's eyes, kicked at knee joints, targeted old injuries he remembered from their time together. Nothing was off limits. Not when Marcus's ghost was watching, not when Sarah's life hung in the balance. Above them, Jack caught movement. Sarah, repositioning, trying to get a clear shot. But they were too close, moving too fast. She couldn't risk it. Jack needed to create separation, give her an opening. He let Cade drive him back, apparently losing ground. Cade sensed victory, pressed harder. They reached the edge of the position, where the rocks gave way to steep slope. Cade tried to corner him there, trap him against the drop. Instead, Jack grabbed Cade's vest, pulled him close, and threw them both over the edge. They tumbled down the slope, bouncing off rocks, tangled together. Jack felt ribs crack, heard Cade curse. They hit a flat section hard enough to drive the air from both their lungs, lay there for a moment, stunned. Cade recovered first. Rolled to his feet, knife still in hand. Jack was slower, his body refusing to cooperate. Cade saw it, smiled, moved in for the kill. The shot came from above. Not aimed at Cade. Sarah couldn't risk hitting Jack, but close enough to make Cade dive for cover. It bought Jack the seconds he needed to get his feet under him, to find his own knife where it had fallen. "Cheating ghost," Cade called from behind a boulder. "Thought we had an agreement." "Agreement was one-on-one. You're still alive, aren't you?" Jack coughed, tasted blood. "Besides, you really think your men stayed back? I count 3 on the ridge, 2 flanking from the east." Cade's silence confirmed it. Of course, he'd positioned backup. Neither of them had really believed this would be a fair fight. "Last chance," Cade said. "Tell Sarah to give up the drive. I let you both walk away." "You're lying." "Probably, but you're going to die either way. At least this way. She lives." Jack looked up the slope toward where Sarah was hidden, looked at his watch. 1 hour and 50 minutes. So close. If he could just hold out a little longer, get to the deadline, everything would be worth it. He thought about Emily, about the daughter he hadn't seen in 15 years, about the chance to make things right that he'd finally earned, about how Sarah had given him back his identity, his purpose, his understanding of who he really was. "I'm not dying today," Jack said. "Neither is she." He charged, ignoring his body's protests, ignoring the logical voice that said this was suicide, caught Cade by surprise with the sudden aggression. They went down together, rolling, stabbing, desperately trying to find the killing blow. Jack felt Cade's blade slice across his side, deep and painful. Felt his own blade score Cade's shoulder, blood mixed with snow, red on white, beautiful and terrible. Then Sarah's voice sharp on the radio. "Jack, they're moving, all of them, coming for us." Cade laughed beneath him. "Told you, one way or another this ends." Jack looked down at the man he'd once called brother. Saw no remorse there, no regret. Just determination and greed, and the hollow victory of someone who'd traded honor for profit. He could kill Cadet now, drive Marcus's knife home, end this personal fight. But Cadet's men would still come. Sarah would still be in danger, and the evidence would die with them if they didn't survive the next 2 hours. Jack made his choice. He pulled back, drove his fist into Cade's temple, stunning him. Then he was up and running, scrambling back up the slope towards Sarah's position. Behind him, Cade groaned, tried to rise. A shot rang out. Not from Sarah, from one of Cade's men on the ridge. The round hit rock inches from Jack's head, spraying fragments. He dove, rolled, kept moving. More shots. A barrage now. They'd given up pretense. This was all-out assault. He reached Sarah's position, breathing hard, bleeding, barely conscious. She grabbed him, pulled him into cover. "You're hit!" "I'll live." "How long?" 1 hour, 45 minutes. She was already firing, controlled bursts at targets Jack couldn't see. "They're coming from 3 sides. We can't hold here." Then we fall back. Final position, the one I've been saving. Jack forced himself to his feet. "Can you move? Can you?" They shared a bloody smile. Then they were moving again, Sarah providing covering fire, Jack leading the way to the last defensive position he'd prepared. The one that was either their salvation or their grave. Behind them, Cade's voice echoed across the valley. "You can't run forever, Ghost. I'm coming, and this time, one of us doesn't walk away." The final position was a cave, partially collapsed, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Jack had found it his first year in the mountains, reinforced it over time, stocked it with supplies for emergencies. It had one entrance, solid rock walls, and a narrow chimney that provided ventilation and, if necessary, a last, desperate escape route. They collapsed inside, both bleeding, both exhausted. Sarah immediately began treating Jack's wounds while he did the same for her. The work was mechanical, practiced, something to focus on while they caught their breath and assessed their situation. "How bad?" she asked, pressing gauze to his side. "I've had worse." He hadn't really, but saying so felt important. "You? Bruised, cut, nothing critical." She checked her watch. 1 hour, 30 minutes. Outside, they could hear Cade's men searching, methodical, professional, closing in. Eventually they'd find the cave. Eventually there'd be a final confrontation. But for now, this moment, they were safe. Jack pulled out Marcus's compass, held it. The brass caught what little light filtered through the cave entrance, gleaming. "He knew," Jack said quietly. "Marcus knew we might both die trying to stop Cade. He went anyway. He believed some things were worth dying for." Sarah touched the dog tags at her throat. "Honor, justice, doing the right thing, even when it cost everything. I wasted 15 years feeling guilty for his death, should have spent them honoring his sacrifice. You're honoring it now." She met his eyes. "We both are." They heard voices outside, getting closer. Jack checked his weapon, his remaining ammunition. Not enough for a sustained fight, but enough. Sarah did the same, her face set with determination. "If we don't make it," Jack said, "if the deadline passes, it won't. We'll make it. We have to." Sarah's voice was fierce. "Because Marcus's evidence needs to reach the world, because your daughter needs to know you're alive, because we've come too far to quit now." Jack smiled despite everything. That stubborn certainty that things would work out if you just fought hard enough. He was usually right. Usually. The voices grew louder, then faded. The search pattern was moving away from their position, at least temporarily. Jack allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe they could wait it out. Maybe Cade would run out of time before he ran them down. Then his radio crackled. Cade's voice, tired but determined. "Ghost, I know you can hear me. I'm calling off the search. You win. I'm leaving. You and Sarah can have your victory." Jack and Sarah exchanged glances. It was a trap. Had to be. But what choice did they have? "I don't believe you," Jack said into the radio. "Smart man. You taught me never to give up, never to quit. I learned that lesson well." A pause. "But here's the thing, Ghost. I'm not giving up. I'm changing tactics. I can't find you in time. But I know where Emily lives. Your daughter. She has a house in Bozeman, works as a teacher, has a son named after his grandfather James. Beautiful family." Jack felt ice flood his veins. "You leave them alone. Give me the drive, Ghost. Give me Sarah, or I make a phone call and your family disappears. You know I have the resources. You know I'll do it." Sarah grabbed Jack's arm. "He's bluffing." "No, he's not." Jack had heard that tone before, in operations when Cade was absolutely serious. "He knows where they live, knows their details. He's been tracking them, probably for years, in case I ever surfaced. Then we can't give in. If we give him the drive, he kills us and your family anyway." She was right. Cade was cornered, desperate. There was no deal that ended with anyone but him alive, which meant they had to hold out, had to survive, had to reach the deadline no matter what. 1 hour, 20 minutes, Sarah said, checking her watch again. Outside, Jack heard engines starting, vehicles moving. For a moment he thought Cade really was leaving. Then he understood. Cade was splitting his forces, sending some to Bozeman, keeping enough here to finish the job, covering all contingencies like the professional he'd always been. Jack made a decision. He grabbed Sarah's radio, the one with the dead man's switch code. "Show me how to trigger it." "What?" "No, we wait. We can't wait. If Cade's really sending people after Emily, we need leverage now. We trigger the upload early, remove his incentive to hurt them." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. She showed him the code, the sequence. "But if we do this, we lose our insurance. He has no reason to keep us alive. He doesn't have a reason now. This way, at least Marcus's evidence gets out. At least justice happens, even if we don't see it." They looked at each other, two people who'd met hours ago but who'd lived a lifetime in those hours, united by loss and purpose and the ghost of a man they'd both loved. "Together?" Sarah asked. "Together." They entered the code. On Sarah's phone, a confirmation message appeared. "Files uploading. 2 minutes to completion." Once done, the evidence would be irreversible, public, devastating. Jack keyed his radio. "Vincent, check your email. Check the news. It's over. The evidence is out. Kill us. Kill my family. It doesn't matter. Everyone knows what you did." Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then, "You fool. You just signed everyone's death warrant." "No. I just took away your power. You're done, Vincent. Come for us if you want. We're not hiding anymore." More silence. Jack counted seconds, waiting for the assault, for the final confrontation. Instead, he heard engines again. This time, moving away, rapidly. Cade was running, trying to salvage what he could before the evidence destroyed him completely. Sarah's phone beeped. "Upload complete." She showed Jack the confirmation. "It's done. Marcus's evidence, your testimony, everything, it's out there." Jack sank back against the cave wall, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. 15 years of guilt, hours of combat, the weight of everything finally catching up. "We made it. We made it." Sarah was crying, he realized. Tears of relief, of grief, of victory. "Marcus, we did it. We finished what you started." They sat in the cave as dawn broke outside, as the storm finally cleared, as the world began to react to the evidence now spreading across news networks and government agencies. They sat and breathed and lived, because sometimes that was victory enough. Later, much later, when federal agents arrived to secure the area and take their statements, Jack asked to make a phone call. They gave him a satellite phone. He dialed a number he hadn't called in 15 years but had never forgotten. A woman answered. Older voice, but still familiar. "Hello?" "Emily," Jack said, his voice breaking. "It's Dad. I know I don't deserve, I know I left, but I'm alive, and I'm coming home, if you'll let me." Silence on the line. Then, "Dad?" Disbelief, hope, confusion. "Where have you been?" "Hiding from ghosts," Jack said, looking at Sarah, at Marcus's compass in his hand. "But I'm done with that now. I'm ready to be your father again, if it's not too late." More silence. Then, softly, "It's never too late to come home." Jack closed his eyes, felt something inside him finally, truly heal. "I'm on my way." When he opened his eyes, Sarah was holding out a new compass, the one he'd given her earlier. "You'll need this," she said, "to find your way." Jack took it, but handed her Marcus's old one. "Keep his. Remember him. Honor what he did." Sarah clutched the compass, nodded. They stood together in the morning light, two people who'd faced death and found life, who'd confronted their pasts and claimed their futures. "What will you do?" Jack asked. "Testify. Make sure Cade and everyone involved faces justice." Then Sarah smiled, tentative but real. "Then I think I'll figure out how to live again. Maybe have that breakfast Marcus always loved." "That sounds good." They walked down the mountain together, toward the waiting agents, toward the complicated mess of debriefings and investigations and consequences, but also toward healing, toward redemption, toward the future they'd earned through blood and courage, and the refusal to give up on what mattered. Behind them, the sun rose over the Wind River Range, painting the snow gold and pink, promising a new day. And for the first time in 15 years, Jack Corrigan Ghost walked toward it with his head held high.